Hello, and welcome back to the Complete Web Developer series, where we are taking you from beginner, absolute beginner, to a job-ready junior developer. So in this video, or in this chapter rather, we are working on JavaScript, and I've already told you how powerful JavaScript is and how awesome JavaScript is, and we have been working on the basics, okay? The thing is, there are a lot more basics we can go through, and I had a lot more in the syllabus that I wanted to go through, and honestly I was like, you know what, this is going to get boring. And so I would rather teach you guys some of the more basic stuff while using it in a real world project. And so we're going to do a project in this video, and it's going to be a self-contained project. We're only going to do it in this one video, and we're going to take everything that we've learned in JavaScript so far, and we're going to learn some new concept as well. But we're going to build a little game. Now, we've all played this game before. It's called Tic Tac Toe. It's one of the worst games ever invented. It's not balanced, and it's really dumb. But it's an interesting game that you can play with you and your kids or something like that, but the logic of it isn't extremely hard. And so what we're going to, and we can wrap it up in one video. So we're going to build a little game using all the technologies, HTML, CSS, and JavaScript that we've learned. And it's not going to need any backend or anything like that. So this is just going to run strictly in the browser, and it's going to be pretty fun, I think. So let's go ahead and click this. So I'm going to show my screen, and if you guys are new and this is the first video you're watching, please comment, like, subscribe, hit that bell notification there. And if you'd like to support me, you can do so on Patreon/freeskills, and you can get some sweet merch like this hat or a shirt or a hoodie or a mug or something like that on freeskills.life. What I'm going to do is create a new branch. So I'm going to type get branch to see what branch I'm on and see what branches I can make. So I'm going to create a branch called V9. We're going to do get checkout -b to create a new branch from the current branch we're on, which is master, and we'll call this V9. Now we're on that new branch locally, but I'm going to push that up to my remote on GitHub by doing git push -- set upstream origin V9. Once we've done that, we are ready to roll. As soon as that is done, maybe my internet's running a little slow here. So we're going to assume that works, and I'm going to head on here. I don't know why that's being slow, but let's create, you know what, inside of this JavaScript, do I want to do this in JavaScript? You know what, inside this JavaScript, let's create a new folder, and let's call this Tic Tac Toe. Okay? I believe that's how you spell tic-tac-toe. And inside tic-tac-toe, let's create a file, and we'll call this index.html. And let's also create a file called styles.html. And let's also create another file called logic.js. So we're going to have 3 files here. We're going to separate our style from our HTML and our JavaScript from our HTML. But let's get started with the HTML. So in our HTML file here, let's just go ahead and use the exclamation tab to get to set up our boilerplate HTML5 code. And for the title, let's put Tic Tac Toe. Okay, hopefully I spelled that right. And then what we're going to do is let's finish up our HTML while we're here. So the first thing that we want to do is let's add a div, and we're going to call this div header. Okay, and inside that header, let's give it an h1, and let's put tic tac toe. Oops, not Todd. We'll do toe, and then let's give it a button element. And we'll put start new game as the text in that button. And then we're going to give that button an ID equal to start game button. Okay? That's it for the header. And outside of that header, what I want to do is let's create an h3. And let's inside this h3, we're going to do a span here, and we're going to do a span with an ID of winning player. Okay, we're going to leave that empty, but outside of that span, we're going to do a space and we're going to do wins, exclamation, 3 exclamations. Then what we're going to do is with this h3, let's give this a class equal to winner. Okay, and that way we can style that up a little bit. Underneath that h3 now, let's do a div with a class of content. And all of our content for the game is going to go here. Inside of here, let's create a div. And inside that div, let's create a paragraph tag. And we're going to say current player. And we'll do a colon and a space. And then let's do a span with an ID equal to current player, like that. Okay, and we're going to use this paragraph to let them know who the current player is. Okay, underneath that paragraph tag, let's add another div with a class of wrapper. And inside here, what we're going to do is we're going to do a div with a class of box. And then we're going to do an ID of 1. Okay, so we'll do that like that. And then what I'm going to do here is I'm going to hit, what is it? It's Control-Shift-D. Nope. What? I'm just going to copy it. So copy, and then what we're going to do is paste this. So what we want here is we want 9 of these. These are going to be each one of the boxes in our game. So I need one more here. All right, once you have 9 of them, go ahead and just give them an ID equal to 1 through 9. And this will be inside of our wrapper, okay? All right, so once we have that, then what we're going to do is outside of this div here, let's see, let's add another div, and this is still going to be in the content here. Let's add another div, and this div, let's give it some inline styles. I don't know why, but let's just do that. Let's give it an inline style, and let's do a min width of 225 pixels. Okay. In here, what we're going to do is we're going to actually add a table, and this table is going to keep track of how many wins each player has. So if they play multiple games, it'll keep track of how many wins they have. So let's add a table, and inside that, let's add a caption, and the caption is going to say total wins. Okay. And then what we'll do is let's do a t-head, and then we are going to, inside of that, have a tr, and then inside of that we're going to have th times 2. And then what we're going to do here is we're going to put x in the first one and o in the next one. Okay, so then what we're going to do is we're going to add a t-body. And the t-body is going to have a tr with a td, and we'll do an ID of x total wins, and we'll do that times 2. And we're going to change the ID of the second one to O total wins. So we have X's and O's. X total wins, and then we're going to do the total wins there. The next thing, the only other thing we're going to do is outside of all these divs, but right before this body tag closes, we are going to include our JavaScript file. And the way we do that is we could say script with a type of text /JavaScript. Okay, and then we're going to do source is equal to, and we'll do a /, and then logic.js, and then we'll close that script tag. Okay, nothing goes inside of there. This is just going to load our logic.js. So I'm gonna go ahead and hit save here, and let's go back now and let's visit JavaScript Tic Tac Toe. Let's see, what did I spell wrong there? Oh, it's a C. Tic Tac Toe. I don't know why I put a K there. There we go. When we load this up, we have this. This is what it should look like for now, but we're going to do some styling to make this look a little better. And one thing, I see that I typed wins instead of wins. So I'm going to go back and fix that really quick so I don't forget to do that now that I noticed that. All right, so let's go now and let's do our CSS styling to start styling this page up a little bit. So go to your styles, and dang it, I created styles.html. So let's rename this, and this should be styles.css. Okay. So then go back to your index.html and scroll up to the head, and underneath the title here, let's go ahead and do our link style sheet, and we're going to link our styles.css. Okay, so we'll hit save there, and then let's go ahead and go to the styles page here. And the first thing that we're going to do is let's get rid of all the extra padding and margin that comes by default. So we'll say in our HTML and body, let's do padding 0 and margin 0. That is just kind of a little bit of a reset. The next thing that I want to do is let's what in the world happened here? Yeah, let's reset our paragraph tag, at least on the top. So let's say on the paragraph, we're going to do a margin top 0. So all we're doing so far is resetting some margins so that there's not so much space. The next thing I'd like to do is let's go ahead and set up our wrapper. Now this is the wrapper around the 9 boxes. So inside here, what I'd like to do is you do display grid, and then we're going to do grid template columns, and we're going to do 3 columns of 75 pixels. So we could do this with a little bit better syntax, but let's make it real obvious. So we'll do 75, 75, and 75. And then we'll also do grid template rows, and we'll do that as well at 75, 75, and 75. The next thing that we're going to do is grid auto flow, and then we'll do row. So what that's going to do is if we have a bunch of divs, it's going to automatically kind of flow this into these columns and rows as it can. Okay, the next thing that we're going to do is right now, if I save this isn't going to really, nothing's going to show up here except for it makes some sizes. What we want to do though is if we style up the box, so those each one of those boxes inside the wrapper, we're going to style those, and let's give those a border. So we're going to give it a border of 1 pixel solid, and we'll use 333 as a color, which is a gray. And then what we're going to do is we're going to give all of these a height of 75 pixels and a width of 75 pixels. So let's go now and refresh that, and now you can see we have something that looks like a tic-tac-toe board. So let's keep styling it up a little bit. Now what I'd like to be able to do, let's just for example put an X in one of these boxes, and let's put an O in the other box, just so we can see some styling here. And when you have that, the X and the O are up in these upper right corners. So what we can do to solve that is in the box, go ahead and also give these a display of flex, and then we're going to align items center, and then we're going to justify content center as well. So this will center it vertically, vertically and horizontally. And then what we're going to do too is let's set the font size in here to something bigger. Let's say 48 pixels. So let's save that and refresh. And now you can see that the X and the O are centered in these boxes and they're bigger. Okay, so that looks pretty good to me. Let's continue on with our styling. The next thing that I'd like to style here is we have inside here we have the winner. So let's go ahead and style that up. So underneath box here, let's add a class called winner. And let's give this a display none by default because we only want this to show up when the game ends. So the first thing we do is do a display none, and then we're going to do a text align center. And then let's do color green to make that kind of a green color, and we'll also do font size 48 pixels on that. We'll make it real exaggerated and big. The next thing that we want to, let's go ahead and refresh this. So it should, right here where it says wins, that should disappear, and it does. So we're tightening that up a little bit. The next thing I'd like to do is I'd like this game to be on the left, and then this table right here to be on the right hand side of that. So let's go ahead and take care of that now. So we had inside of our index here, we had everything inside of this content div. And so we're going to make that flex, okay? So let's go back here and let's do a content class, and let's do display flex, and then let's do justify content center, and then let's do flex wrap, just in case they're doing this on a mobile phone or a small phone. And we're going to give it a gap of 24 pixels so that there's 24 pixels of space between those, whether it's on the left or right, or if it breaks down on a mobile phone. Let's save that and see what that looks like. Okay, so now this is centered and we can see the game here and the table here. Let's continue on. The next thing, let's go ahead and style up the header. So the header's still stuck over here and I don't really like that. So let's go ahead and work on the header now. And the header, let's do display flex. Let's do align items center. And let's do justify content center as well to center the header. And then let's do a gap of only 18 pixels there just to give it some breathing room. And let's make it black. Let's do background color 000 to make that black. The next thing that we're going to do is give the color, the text color in there, well, let's make it all white. Okay, and then let's do a margin bottom of 32 pixels just to give the space between the header and the game. And let's refresh that. Okay, that looks pretty good to me. We have the header up here, Tic Tac Toe, start new game button, and then we have the player board and the table. So the table is the only thing that I think that doesn't look good right now. So let's go ahead now and style up that table a bit. And so what we could do here is we can set the width on that table to be 100%. And then we're going to do the border collapse we're going to set that to collapse so we can avoid double borders. Then what we're going to do is the table caption, let's style that up, and we're going to say that that has a margin bottom of 16 pixels. Let's save this and see where we're at so far. Okay, starting to look a little bit, it's wider, and now the caption is centered. Let's continue on here and let's say, hey, I want THs to have a background color of CCC. Let's save that and refresh. Okay, there we go. And then let's do the TD and the TH, and let's make those border 1 pixel, solid 333, And let's do text align center to align the contents in their center. Okay. The next thing that we want to do is, let's see, let me just check something real quick. Yeah, let's go back to the HTML and just see how this looks. I'm going to get rid of the X and the O in these boxes while we're here. We don't need those right now. But in this table right here, let's just go ahead and put zeros in both of these TDs. So it should be 0 to 0. And there we go. We have our total wins. So every time X wins a game, we're going to increment this. And every time O wins a game, we're going to increment this one. So they can keep track of how many times they win the game. So that is all of the styling and all of the HTML for this game. Now we just need to do all of the logic, which will be all in JavaScript. So at its core, what we would like to do is we would like to make it to where anytime someone clicks on one of these X's, it does something. So if you remember from the last video, we had set up event listeners to listen to a click event. And so we're going to go ahead and do that now. Go ahead and go to the logic.js. And what we're going to do inside this logic.js here is let's set up with our let's set up a variable called boxes. And this boxes is going to be equal to document dot. Now in the past we had used document dot get element by ID, and that would get a single element. But in this case, we want to get all of the boxes in one go here and make an array out of that. So what we're going to do is do document dot query selector all. And then we're going to pass a query selector in here, and we're going to use the period box. And that's going to get all of them that have the class of box. So let's just console log boxes now and save this. And let's go back and make sure you have the console open, and let's refresh. And now you see that we get a node list. Now a node list is an array, and it has 9 elements in that array. And all of these elements here, if I click on them, in fact, if you hover over these, it will highlight those 9 elements. So now we have an array that has all 9 of our boxes in there. So we're going to be able to go through and set event listeners on those very easily. So let's do that real quick. Let's go ahead and let's create a function called start game. Okay, so skip down a few lines here and type function start game. And the start game function is going to start off pretty basic, but what we'd like to do is we're going to set up event listers on all of these boxes. So let's do that first, and let's say boxes, and then we can iterate through those with a for each. So boxes dot for each. And then inside there, what we're going to do is pass an anonymous function, and inside of that, we're going to get the box. Okay, so it's going to loop through each one of these, and for each iteration, it's going to assign it to this variable called box and pass it into this anonymous function. So what we're going to do inside that anonymous function is we are going to say box.enter HTML is equal to an empty string. Now what that's going to do is, say we played a previous game and there's a bunch of X's and O's in there. This right here will set it equal to an empty string. So it's basically resetting the text in there. For now, what we could do is we could just say we could set all of these to X. So let's save that and see what happens. So if I refresh now, well, nothing happens because I need to start the game. So let's work on that. Underneath this function here, at the very bottom, let's do a window.add event listener. And we're going to listen for the load event. And then we're going to pass in an anonymous function here. That's going to be triggered when the load event happens. And we're just going to call the start game function. when that loads, okay? So when I refresh, what I expect to have happen is there's going to be an X in each one of these 9 boxes. And indeed, there is. So that shows that this is working for the boxes.for each. So I'm going to put that back to an empty string to empty it out. And then what we're going to do is add our event listeners to those boxes. So then we're going to say box.add event listener. And we're going to add a click event to that. And then what we're going to do is we're going to call a function called select box. Okay, now we haven't created that function yet. So above this function, let's go ahead and create that one. So let's do function select box. Now this box is going to have an event passed into it, because remember, when an event happens, it passes the event in as a parameter here. And what we're going to do here is we're just going to say console.log event. So save that. And now when I refresh, these should be empty, but when I click on these, we'll get a pointer event on each one of them. Okay, so that's really cool. So what I'd like to do now is let's slow down a little bit, and we are going to need to do a couple things. So first and foremost, I have the event, but this what we want to know is who clicked it, okay, and what box was clicked. Okay, so the first thing that we're going to do is find out what box was clicked. So in this select box, let's go ahead and get rid of this console log, and let's just set up a const of the ID. Let's do, well, you know what, let's just call it value. Okay, so const val is going to be equal to event.target.id. Okay, so then let's console log value here. Okay, and what we want to do is let's refresh here, and now when they click, oops, let's see. Wow, console.log value. I don't know how I screwed that up so bad. So let's save that and let's refresh. And now every time they click one of these boxes, we get the ID of that box printing out here in our console. So that's setting an array, and it listens for these event listeners. Okay, so this event listener is working just fine. One thing is I want these to all be numbers, and right now these are strings, and I can tell you that by, remember, we can console log type of and save, and if I refresh now and click on one of these, it is a string. I'd like to convert those strings to numbers, so we're going to use a function called Parse Int. So we're going to write here that we're going to set the value equal to Parse Int, and it's going to take the first parameter of this is going to be the string that is parsing it into an integer. The next parameter that Parse Int needs is a radix, which is basically, I think this is stupid. They should have set a default here, but this is how you want to use base. So you can use base 2 like a computer, so that would be binary, or you can use what we would use in human terms would be 10. Okay, so that's base 10. So our numbers when we count is in a base 10. So you have to pass that into the parse int function. Now, if I save that and we leave that console log there, now when I click on these, it is number. So it's the type of number. So that's what I want. So let's just console log val now instead of that. And what we should get is the number, the ID will get transferred into a number, and that is passed in just like this. All right, let me grab a drink real quick. I hope you guys are following along so far. If not, just slow it down, rewind it, listen to it again. But where we are in the process right now is we are just printing out, when they click on one of these, what number that box is. And these boxes are numbered 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. Okay, that is the number of these boxes. Okay? So the next thing that we want to do here is we want to somehow track each one of these that are clicked. So let's start figuring out the player, okay? So let's go to the top here and let's create a new variable called current player. All right, and the current player is going to be capital X. Okay, we're going to start off with X as the current player. The next thing that we're going to do is let's keep an array for each player that tracks what boxes they have pressed. So let's create one called X, and that's going to be an array, an empty array by default. And let's create one called O, and that will be an empty array by default. So what we want to do is when they click select box, we want to find who the current player is and put it into their array. Okay, so let's go ahead and do that. So in this select box here, what we're going to do is we have the value, and what we want to do is we want to say if the current player is equal to X, then what we want to do is push the value into their box. Okay, so we will do x.push. Now push is a function, an array method that's added to an array already in JavaScript that allows us to add something to the end of the array. And what we're going to add to the end of that array is val. Okay, then we're going to do an else statement here, meaning if the current player is O, we're actually going to do O.push, and we'll pass in val into that. Okay, so if the current player is X, then the value that they click on will go into this array. So instead of console log and val here, let's console log X. All right, so let's refresh. And now if I click this, we'll see there's an array with a 1 in it. If I click this, there's an array with a 1 and a 5. And if I click this, there's an array with 1, 5, and 9. Now, every time I click something right now, it's going to add to only the X players array, because we are not doing anything to change the player. So what should happen is when someone clicks, when the X player clicks, it should change the current player. So let's go ahead now and let's work on that a little bit. Let's see. Let's, inside of this start game, what I want to do is let's show who the current player is first of all in the DOM. So what we can do here is after this boxes.forEach, let's do document.getElement by ID, and we're going to find the element here in the HTML, the current player. So let's look for that. Current player, the ID was current player. So let's go back here and let's find that current player. And let's do .enter HTML and set that equal to current player. Okay. So now if I refresh, it says that the current player is X. So the starting current player is going to be X. All right, so let's create a function to switch players. So underneath this start game, let's create a function called change player. All right, now the change player function is going to be really basic. What we're going to do is we're going to say current player, and we're going to use a ternary operator, but we're going to say is equal to current player. If the current player is X, then we are going to set the current player equal to O. Else, we're going to set the current player equal to X. So all this is going to do is it's going to swap who the current player is. If the current player is X, it's going to set it to O. If the current player is O, it's going to set it to X. So every time we click change player, it should do that. The next thing we want to do is update the DOM to let the user know. So we're just going to say document.getElement by ID current player dot enter HTML is equal to current player. So now if I refresh, the current player is X. If I click here, the current player is always going to be X, because I need to tell it that during the select box thing, after it sets the value to the array there, we are going to run the change player function. Okay? When we run the change player function, it will switch back and forth. So now let's go and refresh. And now if I click this, it adds to the X array, and now it says our current player is O. So if I click this one, our current player, we're console logging X, so it stays as 1. So let's do it now where we go ahead and update, we update the box's inner HTML. Okay, so that is not very difficult to do. What we can do now is we have this value already, right? And so we are going to take the event.target. So when they select a box, we have access to that through the event.target. Okay, that is the node of the box that was clicked. So then what we can do is we can say inner HTML is equal to current player. So let's save that now. And if I refresh, what's going to happen when I click one of these is going to take the current player and put that into that box. So if I click the next one now, it's O, and then X, O, X, O. Now we have a lot of problems here. The problem is I could just click on this and change it. And we don't want that to happen. So we'll solve that problem a little bit later. But for now, when we click one of these X's, whoever's current turn it is, it places that in the box. Okay? So we're making good progress here. Let's continue on. Let me get a drink. All right. Now, when let's do a couple things real quick. Let's set up, we need to check something, and that is every time someone wins, or every time someone clicks something, we need to find out if the game should end. We need to find out if the person has won. But before we do that, let's go ahead and take care of the issue of once a box is selected, they can't click it again. And we saw that in the last video where we had the we actually had the ability to remove an event listener. So after we change the player down here, we're going to do event.target, which is the current box that they clicked on, and we're going to say remove event listener. And we're going to remove the click event, and we're going to remove the select box function from that event. I'm also going to get rid of this console log right here. So now what happens if I refresh, if I click X and then O goes to click here, it doesn't do anything. Okay, there's no more, and you can see that there's not even a pointer here. Oh, there is, but it doesn't do anything. But if they click this one, then that one works, and then it turns that one off. So it continues, and now we can only click one of these one time. So now we can't change any player's values once they're there. Okay? Let me get another drink. My mouth is so dry. All right, so just simply removing that event listener after they've selected it at the end of our select box method, this actually gets rid of that event listener, so they can't change the value. The next thing we want to do though is after we push the values to these arrays, what we should do is we should run a function called check when conditions. And let's set that equal to a variable, okay? So we'll say let one equals check when conditions. All right, so what are when conditions? This is easily the most complex part of this application, and it's not that complicated. So first we need to tell it what the when conditions are. So up here at the top, let's create a new variable, and this actually could be a constant, and let's say wins, and we're gonna set that equal to an array, and inside this array we're going to tell it every single possibility of a win. So if we go back to our HTML now, and let's just put in here for easy sake 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, and save that, and then in our start game, let's just comment out this line for now, this box.innerHTML, because I want to see a visualization of what these boxes are. So in Tic Tac Toe, you can win when you get 3 in a row. So what are the win conditions? Well, the win conditions would be a 1, 2, or 3. That's one win condition. A 4, 5, or 6 is another. A 7, 8, or 9 is another win condition. And then we got to go this direction. A 1, 4, 7, a 2, 5, 8, 3, 6, 9. Those are also other win conditions. Also, you have the diagonals, so it could be 1, 5, 9 or 3, 5, 7. Those are all the combinations that could happen that could be a win condition. So what we're going to do here is above this wins, what I'm going to do is I'm going to create a comment to make this really easy for us. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. So now we have a visual representation of the boxes. So let's create every single one of those as an array. So the first array was 1, 2, and 3. Okay. The next array was 4, 5, and 6. Then create another array in here. And these win conditions is an array of arrays, and each array is a win condition. So we're going to say 4, 5, 6, and then we'll say 7, 8, 9. Then let's do our horizontal one. Those were our horizontals. Let's do our verticals, okay? So our vertical now is 1, 4, 7. And then we'll do 2, 5, 8. And then 3, 6, 9. So we have our horizontals and our verticals now. Now we just need to do our diagonals. So those diagonals could be 1, 5, 9, and the last one was 3, 5, 7. So 3, 5, 7. These are all the possibilities of winning in Tic Tac Toe. Now we could have used some sort of algorithm to figure this out, but I wanted to just show you manually what these would be. So these are all win conditions. Each one of these arrays inside of this array is a win condition. And so what we're going to do is we're going to loop through these win conditions and check if the user, whoever the current user is, has all of those, has a combination of any of these. And if they do, we are going to declare them the winner. All right, so next what we're going to do is going to I keep putting an extra D here somehow. So we need to create a function called check win conditions. I'm going to do that kind of low down here. So we'll do a function called check win conditions. All right. Now check win conditions. What does that look like? Well, first of all, we need to know who the current player is. Okay. And what we're going to do is, remember we called the X and the O. So what we're going to do here is we're going to create let's create a constant of the checked values. Okay. So the checked values, we're going to call this checked. And the checked values is going to be a ternary, and we're going to say, hey, if the current player is equal to X, then the checked thing that we're looking for is the X. Else it's going to be O. Now these, we're not putting any quotes around these. These relate to these variables right here. So checked is going to be a copy of either X or O depending on the current player. All right, once we've done that, let's set a variable up to does win, and does win by default is going to be false. Okay, then what we're going to do is we're going to loop through each one of these win conditions, and as we loop through those win conditions, we're going to check to see if they have any of those. Okay, so let's do a wins dot for each, and this is going to take a function that will pass each array of win into it. Okay, and what we want to do here is we're going to do another variable here called has all, and by default this is going to be false. And then what we're going to do, you know what, does JavaScript have, let me look up JavaScript has all array elements. Check if an array contains all elements of another array. Every. I think we can simplify this. Let's try to use this, every. So let's go here and let's say, let's do this. Let's say does win. Let's see. Actually, let's do let has all equal to, and then what we're going to do is check every. Okay, so we'll say win dot every, and then we're going to pass in the array. So if you look here, you're going to pass in the array that we're checking against. So in that case, I believe we just pass in checked. So let's do now, let's console log has all. All right. So if I go back here now and we refresh, let's go back and uncomment this. And then let's start clicking on these. Dot every array is not a function. Let's see. Did I do that backwards? Let's see. Oh, okay. So this is going to run on every iteration. So I was trying to do this without doing extra loops, but it doesn't matter. So what we're going to do here, let's do this. This is going to take a function, okay, and then it's going to pass into this function the current value. So we're going to give this a name of, I don't know, B for box, okay? And then what we're going to do is we're going to say returns checked dot includes, which will tell us if it's in the array of B. Okay. So now it's going to loop through all of these, and at the end of this, if it has everyone in this checked, then it's going to has all will be true, else it's going to be false. So if I go back here now and refresh, okay, that is false. If I do another one, we have false, false. This one here should return true if I did this right. And boom, we do have a true right here. All right, so it did return a true, meaning there is a when condition with O. Okay, so let's look at this. This function is a little bit complex. So let's look at it again. What we want to do is we want to say, hey, for every when condition, so it's going to go through each one of these and iterate through those. For each one of those, run it through a function, and we're going to have a array in there. We're going to say for every when condition, look and see if that is included in their array. So if it's X, it's going to be X. If O or O. So do they have each one of those in here? So then what we want to do is we're actually going to right here outside of this anonymous function here, what we want to do is we're going to say, hey, if has all, so if this is ever true, then what we're going to do is we're going to put does when equal to true. Yep. So then at the end of this, all we're going to do is return does when. So all this function's job is each time we run it, it's going to take the current player and see if they have any combination of the winning combinations, okay, in their array. So let's go ahead now and save that and refresh, and let's test it. X, X, and I didn't do anything to show us if that is. So up here in our select box, we're doing this one. So let's do a console log here, and we want to know if they won or not. So let's refresh and try again. Check when conditions. Oops. I actually have the return in the wrong spot. So we need this outside of this for each loop. We're going to do return does when, like that. Sorry about that. Let's refresh and try again. So now we have false, 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 and this should be true. Boom, we got a true. And then they also have a true, okay? So from then on, it's going to come back as true. Perfect. So we have our check when conditions. So now what we want to be able to do is inside this select box, if they won, we're actually going to do something, and that is we are going to run the end game. Okay. So right here, instead of console logging, we're going to say, hey, if won, meaning the game should end, then we're going to run the end game like this, else we're going to run the change player. We don't want to change the player if the game ends. So I'm going to go ahead and get rid of this console log right here, and I'm going to get rid of this change player. We'll hit save, and then we need to run this end game thing real quick. So we don't have that end game, and the end game is going to be another function that we run. So we'll do function end game. Okay, and the end game is going to first take the winner and put them inside of, if you look at our HTML, we had a spot called winning player, and we want to put that in there and let them know who won. So the first thing we're going to do here is we're going to say document.getElement by ID, and that was the winning player, and we're going to say inner HTML is equal to, okay, is equal to current player. So if we save that and refresh now, nothing's going to happen actually, because this is still hidden by CSS. So we're going to go ahead and show that. So the way we do that is we find it, we say document dot query selector, which only gets the first query selector, and we're going to find that by the class name, which was winner. And then we're going to say dot style, which lets us, oh, come on, dot style, which lets us get to the styles of that element. And then we're going to say dot display, which is the display element, and we're going to set that equal to block. So if you look in the CSS, it starts off with the dot winner set, the display is set to none. But we're going to use JavaScript to set that display style to block when the game ends. So let's go now and let's refresh that and just test that out. So if I go through here and X wins, so now it says X wins. Perfect. That's what we want to see. But for now, we can continue on and it never changes the player again. It just keeps saying X wins, which isn't bad, but we want to do a couple other things. Okay, so when the game ends, the next thing that we want to do is we actually want to increment who won the game. So what we can do is, if you look back up at the top, we had these, we need to set up some variables up here that we haven't set up yet. So let's do let x1, and we'll set it to 0 by default. And we're going to say let o1. We'll set that to 0 by default as well. So now that we have these, we can just iterate these. So go down to end game. And here we're going to say, hey, if current player is equal to X, then what we're going to do is we're going to say X1 plus plus. Okay? Then what we're going to do is we are going to say else O1 plus plus. Okay? So if the current player is X and the game ends, then and they won, then it's going to be X1. Okay? So I hope that makes sense. We're going to do plus plus there. And then what we're going to do is we need to set those. So if you save here, we need to update these numbers right here. So we can do that down here at the bottom. And we're going to say document dot get element by ID. And this ID for in that table, remember, was X total wins. And then we're going to say, hey, the dot inner HTML on that is going to be equal to X1. Okay? Now, if we go and look at the HTML there, we can see that table right here. We have X total wins and O total wins. So what it's going to do is replace it after it's incremented with those new values. So then we're going to do the other one as well. So we'll say document.getElement by ID. This time we're going to look for O total wins. And we're going to set the inner HTML on that equal to O1. Okay. The next thing that we want to do, let's refresh this. Let's just test this out. So XO, XO, X. So now it says X wins, and it adds the X condition in here. But if I keep clicking this, it's going to increment X each time because the rest of these boxes still have click events. And when you click them, it's going to do the check again. And instead of changing player, it's going to continue to say, yep, X1, 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 and it increments. Well, we don't want that to happen. So the last thing that we need to be able to do is in this end game is we want to remove all of the event listeners. So what we're going to do is we're going to say boxes dot for each, and then we're going to say we're going to pass in a function here, and that's going to take the box, the individual box, and all we're going to do is say box dot remove event listener, and I said an S here for some reason. Dang it, I did it again. So we're going to remove the event listener on the box, and we're going to remove the click event, and we're going to remove the select box function. So now what should happen is that it's going to loop through all the boxes, and any of them that still have the event listener on, it should remove them. So I shouldn't, after I won, now I can't click on any of the boxes. So that just ends the game right there. And now x is equal to 1. So now what we need to do is have the ability to click start new game and start a new game. So that is super easy. What we can do is in the load event listener, we are going to do document.getElement by ID, and we are going to find that button, which if you look in the header, it was start game button. So I'm going to copy that and go back to the logic here and paste it in here, and we're going to say add event listener, and we're going to add a click event listener on that, and what we're going to do is call start game once they click that. So let's test that out now. If I go back here and refresh, we can go through here, and now it says X wins. I can no longer click on anything, which is good, but if I click start new game, it will go and start over. But we have quite a bit of problems now. For one, it only lets us click the first time because it didn't clear out the previous values. So the array, when you click start game, these are still populated from the previous game. So we don't want that. So what we have to do is we need to do a couple things. I think we should go back to the start game function here and just add a few more things here just to go ahead and completely reset the game. So in the boxes, it adds the click event and empties them out, but we also we want to say that X is equal to an empty array and O is equal to an empty array. So every time they click start game now, it's going to take these two arrays and set them back to an empty array. Okay, so now they'll no longer have any sort of options here. The other thing that we want to do is, you notice, let's refresh here. You'll notice that when they click this X wins is still here, and if I click start new game, the game works now, but it still says X wins up here. So we need to fix that. So let's go ahead and all we have to do is hide that. So we could say document.getElement. Actually, we need to use the query document.query selector, and we're going to select it by the class name. So we'll use a period and winner, and then we're going to do is say .style.display, and we're going to set that equal to none. Okay, so that will hide that. The next thing that we want to do when you hit start player is well, let's just try the game out and see what happens. So if I go through here and I click this, then X wins. If I hit start new game, try it again, it hides that. X wins again. Start a new game, and what starts to happen is the X is always the first player, and I think it would be nice to give the advantage to the next player. So each game, when you start a new game, it should change to the next player. So let's go ahead and do the logic to do that, which won't be that bad. So in the start game, we're going to have to track, actually at the top, let's track starting player. And we're going to set the starting player to O by default. But when they click the start game, or when start game is run, the first thing we're going to do here is we're going to say if starting player is equal to O, then the current player is going to be equal to the starting player, and that's going to be equal to X. So it's going to set both of these to X. So it's going to both of these will be this. So the first time this runs, since we're starting with O, the current player and the starting player will be X. But the next time they run the game, then the starting player is going to be X. So then we're going to say, hey, make the current player equal to the starting player and make that O. So this will actually switch back and forth now. If I refresh, XO, XO, X. Okay, so now if I click start new game, now the current player is O. So now O starts the games. Okay, now O wins. So if they keep doing the same pattern, it's just going to keep incrementing this table here. And now each of them have 2 wins. So they can track how many times each person has won. Let's see, was there anything else that I wanted to do here? Each time they hit start, it bounces back and forth. I actually think, I don't see any other weirdness right now. Let's just go through a full game here. Okay, X wins. So what happens when there's, okay, O wins. So now let's try to do a cat's game or whatever that's called when neither player wins. So if I do X, O, and then X tries to go here and then O blocks them, and then X tries to go here and O blocks them. So then X goes here to block O. So then O goes here to block X, and then X goes here. So neither player wins, so there's no win condition, but nothing else happens. So they have to click start new game, and now it continues on. So yeah, I think this works just fine. So we have just built, let's see how many lines of code here. We got about 84 lines of code in the JavaScript. We have 67 lines of code in the CSS, and we have like 54 in the HTML. So it's not too bad. We've completely built our own game, our own fully working tic-tac-toe game that works here in the browser, and it keeps track. You can run multiple games and see who wins the most games. So I think that's pretty cool. Let me know what you guys think. I'm gonna go ahead, and you guys, if you have any issues, you can check out the branch V9. V9 will be the tic-tac-toe branch, and you guys can see what your logic does different than mine. Okay, so let me know what you thought of this, if you had fun building tic-tac-toe as I did, and we will see you guys in the next video where we're going to build another mini project and we're going to do some API interactions. Okay, so I will see you there.